Hey everybody, welcome back to Smith Party of Six. Today we are going to be talking all things kindergarten. So obviously when you get involved with homeschooling, you start watching lots of videos about curriculums out there and you start comparing things, watching curriculum pick videos, seeing people talk about why they chose different curriculums, and so much of it is just so interesting and intriguing and drawing, and a lot of it is just really beautiful and inviting. And I'm gonna go ahead and throw this out there right now and just say that when I first started homeschooling, it was such a blessing to use the curriculum that we used because it was just so different for me. I don't know if I would have been able to do it and do it well without a curriculum. However, after a few years of experience, I just really want to encourage you, if you are a mom out there who is like, you know what? I don't really want to use a curriculum. I just want to say, don't feel like you have to. Don't feel pressured into everybody choosing certain curriculums and feeling like you really need to fit yourself into one. So instead, I'm going to kind of advocate today for something that, I don't know, I call like intuitive homeschooling basically. So you've been the teacher of your child for their entire life so far, right? You've taught them absolutely everything that they know. You watch them, you see when they're ready to learn different things. We look for the clues of when they're ready to crawl, when they're ready to walk, when they are starting to talk, and we help develop that more and more in them. When they're starting to pick out colors, when they're starting to notice letters, all of these different things, we notice these things. We watch for the signs in our kids. We see when they're interested in something and we jump on that and start teaching them more about that thing. And I think that especially in the young years of homeschooling, it can absolutely still look exactly like that. Sometimes I think that we put way too much pressure on ourselves to look a certain way when we really don't have to. So if you have been around this channel at all, you've seen that over summer I posted like our curriculum picks videos and I show the different things that I've chosen for each subject and all of that. And so maybe it's kind of weird to hear me say like that you don't have to have a curriculum. But when I first started homeschooling, I literally chose one company for our curriculum, and that is what I did for everything. And then over time, I started kind of noticing, okay, maybe this could work a little bit better if I did something else here. And oh, maybe I could sub in this curriculum instead over here. And oh, maybe this subject doesn't necessarily need a curriculum, but I can do X, Y, and Z right here. So over time, the way that I choose curriculum and what I choose has definitely evolved. If you go back to the very beginning of our videos, which I don't necessarily recommend because I cringe every time that I watch my old videos, but if you happen to do that, if you feel like you have extra time and you just want to, I started off homeschooling actually with our 2-year-old daughter at the time. So this is not something that I'm like, everybody should homeschool very, very small children. It was really just, she was interested in learning things. Like she was very much into like the alphabet and just different things at that young age. And so I kind of would put together like little lessons and activities and stuff for us to do together to kind of help her grow in that. If your child is 2 and they are not interested in school, please don't feel like it's a necessity. It's really not. It's just something that worked out well for her at that age. So what I did during that time period was watching my daughter be interested in different things, and then I would put together activities based on that to kind of help her grow and build her skills. And so I think that really in the young years with pre-K and kindergarten, it can look exactly like that. Just like I said before, of seeing what skills our kids are ready for and going from there. So with all of that being said, I want to help you as a homeschool mom to be able to intuitively put lessons together for your child. It doesn't even have to be a full year plan. A lot of times I start with a year plan just because that's what I do. That way, if everything goes to plan, then I know exactly what we're covering for the year. But a lot of times within that, I'll kind of pivot as the year goes on and see okay, let's assess this skill set. Oh, he's way further than what I thought he would be in this, so we're gonna pivot a little bit. Or he really needs a little bit more time with this stuff, so we'll spend some more time here, or whatever the case may be. I think that really the main thing is understanding kind of what your goals are, what you would want them to be able to learn for that year, and going from there, kind of seeing where they're at right now, how we can get from point A to point B. And that might sound like it's going to be some really in-depth plan, but it doesn't have to be. So let's go ahead and jump into each subject and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. So obviously, kindergarten is usually a big year for kids learning how to read. I will not say that that is always the case. Some kids, it takes them a little bit longer. Some kids have already learned how to read before then. So for example, our son, Aspen, he really started to read already when he was 4, and this year has kind of just been refining that and practicing more and more. Whereas for a couple of our other kids, they didn't really learn how to read super well until they were 5, maybe even pushing into age 6 before it was like, okay, yeah, I can confidently read this stuff now. I've even heard of some kids not being able to read super well until they're 7. Like that's perfectly normal. So again, I don't want any of this to feel like pressure. I want it to just be kind of helpful. This is how you piece this together, give you different ideas. Do not feel any pressure whatsoever. But this is usually the year when they start to learn how to read. So if your child doesn't already know how to read, there are 2 things that you can do. Either number 1, you can choose to get a reading curriculum of some kind. This can be something really elaborate, like something like All About Reading, that's like very, very thorough. I know a lot of people love it. We've never tried it. It was definitely something that I looked at before and I was like, I just can't justify for myself spending that much money on a reading curriculum when there's other stuff out there that'll probably still work. So we've never tried it, but if that's something that is in your family's budget, go for it because it looks like a really awesome program. If you're needing something a little more low key, I have used before, and I have it right here, Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. We used this for our daughter, Arwen. I will say it is not flashy. It is not eye-catching whatsoever. It does not look very interesting whatsoever. The lessons are all in black and white and kind of this reddish pink color. The reddish pink is what you're saying to your child. The rest are instructions for you, and they are learning to say each thing, starting at the dot and sliding their finger across as they say the sounds for each one. And they're going to be learning about blending sounds and all of that. It is a very simple type of curriculum. It is not a very exciting type of curriculum. It got the job done and it was very inexpensive. You can buy it on Amazon for a low cost. I will try to remember to put that up on the screen for you guys. So using a curriculum that's already put together is version 1. The other option is to fully teach your child how to read on your own. Some parents do not want to do this. For others, it is a perfectly viable option. And it also, I think, depends on the child because I have 4 different kids and each of them, it was different to teach them how to read. My first son learned how to read in public school, but I taught all the rest of the 3 how to read. And no 2 of them has looked alike in that process. So for Aspen, I didn't have to use any of that stuff. I was able to teach him fully on my own without it. And then since then, it's just been reading practice. But he's a kid who has caught on to reading honestly really quickly. Like I can't even take credit for it. It's something that just kind of comes naturally to him, which you'll have that with some kids. If you are into Charlotte Mason homeschooling, I know that a lot of you here are, we're Charlotte Mason homeschoolers. There is a resource out there. There was a mom that put it together on her personal like homeschooling blog for teaching your child to read the Charlotte Mason way without any extra resources, just you and your child. And I will link that down in the description box if you're interested in that whatsoever. So if your child does already know how to read, a few of the things that we've really liked to help with kind of that practice and that building. First of all, we used to use everything, the good and the beautiful. And I will also go ahead and give a plug really quickly for their preschool program because my son Aspen did do their preschool when he was 3, I believe. And their preschool curriculum is very, very good, very thorough with the letters. And I think that it really gave him a nice foundation before we started to try to read on our own without any curriculum. So I will go ahead and also link that down in the description box. I don't earn anything from that. I just want to pass it on to you guys. So once they know how to read though, these beginner books, box sets, from The Good and the Beautiful are really nice. So box A, for example, it'll have really simple books in there. Homes, Birds, Up, the Fox, The Red Kite, Snow, The Hill, Max, Dot the Dog, and The Cub. So I would just kind of go through each one of those, and I usually started with like the simplest, which I think in this one is Up, and then we would just kind of work our way up from there, seeing which one that he was ready for next. Box B is very similar. It's just a small step up from A, so you're starting to have a little bit more blending and things like that going on, or the different like phonetic pairs that make sounds together, like My Barn, Zigzag Up the Hill, On the Farm, Ben Can See the Star, Bess Has a Bell, Pip the Pet, I Can See, The Seed, Big Not Big, and The Deer. So at that level, it's still fairly simple. And then we also have box C. I think that I know that they for sure have a box D. I don't know if they have any more after that or not, but we don't have box D and up. Box C is when the books get a little bit taller, a little bit more words on each page. The Best Nest, Jack and the Ant, A Rock for Nick, Liz the Skunk, Dee and Dix, The Bat Cave, Mike and His Plane, The Big Mess, My Dad Can Play, and Yarn Hats. So each of those is gonna like work on different phonetic skills and things like that. In the beginning of each book, there are also challenge words, so words that they may not have seen up until this point that they're going to find in the book to give them a chance to practice them before they start reading the story. And so we liked that as well. So we use all of those books kind of like as fun extra practice. The main thing that I use after they've learned how to read for just like kind of daily practice with reading lessons is the McGuffey's Eclectic Readers set. So Aspen has been going this year through the Pictorial Eclectic Primer. Of course, they are very old. We were able to find this box set at our local used bookstore, which if you have one, I highly recommend you going there like frequently. Our local used bookstore is incredible, and it's been a huge reason why we've been able to build a fairly extensive home library. And we can also find a lot of their Ambleside books there every year. So inside of these McGuffey lessons, these are a couple of the ones that my son did over the past week. So this one, for example, is going to have kind of like word families and then like some more challenging words down at the bottom. And then this lesson, it gives introductory words. And then on the back, there's a passage that you read that has those words that you just practiced in there. Some people use these for like spelling lessons and stuff like that too. I did that some with Arwen. I haven't really done that much with Aspen. I just don't necessarily feel the need right out the gate to practice spelling right now, but he does use these for reading. We usually read about like 4 passages out of the book spread over the course of the week. So those are just a few ideas for you of things that you can do. If you have some old-fashioned readers, those can be really nice to read out of, or different box sets like that with lots of like bright and fun pictures. That can be a lot of fun for kids that age. But honestly, when it comes to them having a love of reading and like actually desiring to be able to read on their own, a lot of times that also just depends on what we are reading to them, which can be just as important. So a few of the things that my kids have really enjoyed. First of all, I'll just say this is kind of like on the line between things for them to read themselves and things for us to read to them. If your child is not quite ready to learn how to read on their own yet, you can still read things like this to them, like the Little Bear set. Our kids love these. These are ones that I have them read on their own when I feel like they're ready. We also really love the Beatrix Potter stories. So we go through like Peter Rabbit and Benjamin Bunny, Jemima Puddle Duck, all of those different characters. It also is going to introduce them to vocabulary that's bigger than what they are going to get in any of the stuff that they're personally reading on their own. So even if they might not quite be able to read certain words yet, they can still digest those words. And so they're going to get a lot of those in Beatrix Potter's writings. Those are some of our favorites. And really, when you're wanting to kind of build your own curriculum and you're trying to figure out what literature you want to read to your child, that's what you're looking for. You want to look for something that's going to introduce rich vocabulary to them. It doesn't need to feel fluffy or like it's being kind of like dumbed down for a child. You would be amazed at the type of words that they can learn. For example, like in the story of Squirrel Nutkin, it talks about him being impertinent. And that is something that our son Aspen, he hadn't heard the word impertinent before, and I knew that he wouldn't have heard it. And so I paused after I was done with the sentence when I had read it, and I asked him if he knew what impertinent meant. And of course he didn't, but that gave us the chance to talk about impertinence and what that means and how Squirrel Nutkin was being impertinent. And then later on that same day, I actually heard him using that word with his siblings. So it's a good way to introduce vocabulary that they wouldn't be used to. Whereas if we choose books that are kind of watered down to be on the level of children, then I just really feel like we're doing them a great disservice. We're not trying to stretch them and challenge them. And that's something that I really appreciate about the Charlotte Mason philosophy of homeschooling. It's really kind of changed my view on children's literature and what it should sound like and what it should feel like and all that sort of thing. So along those same lines with like Beatrix Potter, we also really like A.A. Milne. So any of like the old Winnie the Pooh stuff, like this is the Pooh storybook and it has several of the Winnie the Pooh stories. He really enjoyed that. Also with A.A. Milne, we have The World of Christopher Robin. This book has 2 of A.A. Milne's poem books in it, When We Were Very Young and Now We Are 6, which they do read these poems in year 1 of Ambleside. So if that's something that you're wanting to do, then maybe don't read all of the poetry in here during kindergarten, because then they're just going to hear those same poems again the following year. But I choose usually a selection of those that maybe we wouldn't get to the following year. The Velveteen Rabbit is another one that my kids really enjoy that we read at some point during their kindergarten year. The Fairy Tales of the Brothers Grimm. This version of this book has been really fun for them. It has kind of cool illustrations in there and it tells more of like the traditional versions of the fairy tales. This one isn't, well, I shouldn't necessarily say that it's not gory. I was gonna say that it wasn't super bloody and gory. When you think of the Brothers Grimm, you might think of like blood and gore and stuff. I was gonna say that it's not, but I mean, in Snow White, it does talk about her wanting to cut out her organs and eat them. So if your family's more sensitive about that, then maybe don't go the Brothers Grimm route, but for our kids, it's been fine. And we also, of course, really like to include poetry. Like I was talking about with the A.A. Milne poetry, this year he was reading a children's book of verse and also The Real Mother Goose, which are like all the old nursery rhymes. So he's still in the middle of this one right now. He's finished this one already. So again, these are just a few ideas. So you can incorporate some of your favorite poetry. I know, for example, one of our friends really likes Shel Silverstein's poetry. Silverstein, I don't know how you say it. So she has that at her home and she reads that to her kids. A lot of like seasonal books. So like, of course, during Christmas time, I pick up so many different Christmas books from the library or from the used bookstore. We do the same thing with like Thanksgiving. You know, we just want like cozy, thankful, family related type books, that sort of thing. So when they're this young, picking out literature can be pretty simple. We just want to make sure that we're not picking things out that are so easy that it's like their brains don't even have to think about anything at all. And kind of going hand in hand with the learning to read can also be learning how to form the letters. That doesn't always have to be writing. So what I start out with my kids is something like this that I can fill with like sand or Epsom salt for like baths and stuff like that. You can put in there and we will start to form the letters. They can either do it with their finger, or this comes with like this wooden little stick here that they can kind of hold like a pencil and start to form them. Or you can even start out with their finger and then transition into that. But this kind of helps them learn the basics of letter formation before really learning about that like pencil grip and all of that, where they kind of need a little bit more of those hand muscles that aren't quite fully developed until they're just a little bit older. So I have like little letter cards that I would hold up for him, and then he would try to form the letter in the sand. I would give him some instruction, maybe hold his finger for the first time, and then have him try to do it on his own after that. So that really helps a lot. And while you are forming the letters, if you're also going over the sounds for them, I think that's actually one of the steps in the method of teaching your child to read that I'm going to link down in that description box, is them being able to form the letters while they're saying it. And then eventually over time, instead of forming it in something where they can actually still see it, learning how to write it in the air while saying the sounds for it as they go, kind of taking it from the very concrete to the more abstract inside of their brain, still being able to picture it and say it sound with it. If you really want like a handwriting curriculum for your child, The Good and the Beautiful has a handwriting curriculum that we really like. So this is their level K. In it, they're still writing nice and big, and then there's like some like drawing things where they can try to copy it, see if they can do it, or different things that they can color in inside of the book. Like this one says draw water under the ship and then color the boat. So we have this one. He doesn't use it all the time, but especially if he notices the other kids doing a handwriting lesson, he might ask if he can do his, and then so I tell him that he can pull out his handwriting book if he wants to. So besides enjoying stories and reading and writing, there are certain basic math principles that they should get through in kindergarten to kind of help give them a nice basis and a solid foundation for math and start to really enjoy math too. So this year, what we've really focused on is number sense for the numbers 1 through 10, like really understanding those numbers 1 through 10, knowing what they look like, being able to recognize them very quickly on a 10 frame and know automatically, oh, that's 7, without sitting there and counting to 7, just knowing by looking at it that it's 7, knowing how to write them, and also adding and subtracting with those, just like very basic addition and subtraction that's very manipulative heavy. So he is allowed to use manipulatives for any of the addition and subtraction that we do anytime. I haven't tried to have him do a whole lot of mental math other than with ones that are under 5 or with the doubles. So if it's like 4 plus 4, 5 plus 5, 6 plus 6, he knows those. But beyond that, we've just kept it super manipulative heavy to make it simple, because I really want him to be able to visualize what he's doing when it comes time to take the manipulatives away. I want it to be a really gentle process over the next few years to where he's just really, really solid in those math concepts. So that's been the first thing, just basic number sense for those smaller numbers, basic addition and subtraction. We've worked a lot with patterns. So for that, I use like little wooden blocks that are different colors, and we'll try out different patterns together, or he'll make up a pattern and then have to repeat it. Of course, counting up to 100, and sometimes he wants to continue to go even after 100, which is great. And he's also started skip counting, so he can skip count by 10s, and has just gotten down skip counting by 5s now, and we're gonna work on the 2s next. So those are really those basic math concepts that I want down. Another thing that we've done for math just for fun, from the old Good and Beautiful math box, they would have these little cards. I don't know if you can see all the lines in between everything there. And then the pattern block pieces where you'd have to find the blocks and put them onto the cards where they go to make those different shapes. So there were lots of different ones that you could do, all the way up to, I think this is the last one here, that with the turkey there. And as you go along, not all of the lines are filled in. So then you would have to figure out, okay, like what 3 shapes would make this spot on the card or whatever. So he also really enjoyed that. And to me, that's kind of getting the early principles of logic down, which really goes well with math. So we would do that during math time sometimes as well. And I should also go ahead and take the time just to mention that with any of these things, we're keeping the lessons really short. This is the principle in Charlotte Mason homeschooling, that you want to keep lessons short and really vary the lessons to keep the attention of the child, that like their full attention is exerted on the thing at hand, because that's when they actually are able to soak up the most. So we really want to keep that attention. It's very, very important. And going ahead and setting up that habit early on, like in pre-K and kindergarten, that, you know, when we're doing this certain lesson, that's what we're focusing all of our energy on, that's going to make everything easier as school time goes on into the future. So in a basic day, we would start with calendar, which you can see our calendar hanging up on the wall behind us. So we'll scratch off whatever day it is, talk about the day of the week, the date, the month, all of that stuff, anything special going on for the day. Then he might read something to me. Then we'll do some math together, usually about like 10 minutes. Then we might do a little bit of geography, which we'll talk about here in just a second. And then I might read him a poem, or it might be the day when I am reading him a story. And so he'll choose out one of the fairy tales and I'll read maybe just like a couple pages of it. And then we'll pause there for the day and we'll pick up where we left off the following day. It's just very short. And a lot of times by the end of it, he's like, oh, I want to do more. And that's a good place to leave it. If they're still wanting to do more, but it's time to move on, that's okay. That is a lot better than trying to tug them through the entire lesson. So I just wanted to throw that in there really quick while talking about math and stuff, to not overwhelm them at this age. Really, with kindergarten, what you're wanting to do is kind of lay that foundation of learning is exciting. Learning is magical. It opens up all of these possibilities and you're getting to take in all this information and know all this stuff that you didn't know anything about before. You know, you want to make it something enjoyable, almost like a treat, something that they're looking forward to, not something that it's like, oh, well, mom makes me sit down at the table during this time and it's awful. And of course, there might be those days. I'm not going to say that there's never going to be those days. But overall, with kindergarten, what you're trying to do is really draw them in and to have them love learning. This is an exciting thing. This is a comforting thing, being with mom and reading these books. This is something that is enjoyable. All right, and lastly, I did mention some geography. So this is something that I do differently than what Charlotte Mason would do. So with Charlotte Mason homeschooling, you start out very tight and close to where you are, and as the child gets older, you work your way out. So it's like their worldview is expanding as they grow older, which I do love the idea of that. And yet I cannot break out of my brain that like I want them to understand more of the entire world as well. So Charlotte Mason would encourage like walks around your neighborhood, becoming very familiar with where you live. And then the next step, knowing more about like your whole town or your whole city, and then the surrounding cities that go along with that as well. And then your entire state, and then your country, and then the continent, and then, you know, the entire world. But we go ahead and we start out with world geography. So this year I was having him point out the continents. I would say, show me Africa. And then he would turn and point to it. Show me North America. And then he would find it. So I started out with just a few of them. I would go up to our big map that we have on our wall and I would point out just 3 continents to him and have him repeat the names after me. And then I would say, I wonder if we can find those on our globe. And we would find them together. And we would practice those for a couple of days. And then the next time that we had a geography lesson, I would see if he still remembered those. And if he did, I would add in 1 or 2 more until he had all of the continents down. And then we also did the oceans along with that, so that now he can point out where any of the continents or the oceans are, which in my mind is going to make it easier when we go into year 1, because now that I know it's coming in Ambleside, like I have my sea legs with it now. I know certain people that we're going to learn about in history, and we're going to talk about where they're from. Even in year 1, even though it's like that very basic, I'm thinking, for example, the 50 Famous Stories book. We might be learning about the Black Douglas and be talking about Scotland. And I can say, well, Scotland is in Europe and it's part of the UK, and we can find that, and he'll have a basic understanding of where the different things are. It's not that I think that his mind at 5 can comprehend quite how large the world is or fully understand, but I do want to kind of start laying that basic foundation of like, the world is much bigger than you can grasp right now. So once he got those down, then we started moving into this first atlas book, which I think I bought like the first year that we were homeschooling, maybe even before we officially started homeschooling. I'm not 100% sure, but this thing has been well loved. It has been used very, very well. We have like an official big, really nice atlas as well for when they get a little bit older, but this one when they're young is really, really helpful. So if he is having an atlas lesson, then I ask him like what part of the world that he wants to learn something about that day. For example, so I'll flip it open like this. In the front, this is basically like the table of contents. And for example, for our last one, he chose this part of Europe. And so we flipped to page 30 and it's about Central and Eastern Europe. So I'll just read him what it says there. We'll talk about different little snippets and facts that it gives us all around. His favorite thing to do when we're doing this is find like any of the little pictures of animals, and then we look up what they actually look like. Also, like when we were doing Australia, he saw in there the Great Barrier Reef, and so we were able to look that up and talk more about it. So for this one, I always have my computer or my phone with us, and we're looking up lots of pictures of wherever it is that we're talking about and the type of wildlife and stuff like that that's there. So that's been really fun. Another way, again, just to kind of like bring all of this to life, like this is exciting, this is magical that you're learning about all of this stuff all over the world that, you know, maybe you'll never see, maybe one day you'll get to. And really that's the thing, it usually ends up sparking like a big interest to go and travel and, oh, I want to go see that one day. And I really hope that he gets to. And then the other thing that we have been doing for geography, we've just started doing this. I found this book at that local used bookstore that I was talking about. And it is called Amazing Expeditions, Journeys That Changed the World. And lots of the people that are in this book are people that, again, I know are coming up for him eventually in history. And so I'm just kind of wanting to lay the foundation of these explorers and kind of introduce him to these different people just in little bite-sized pieces until he actually gets there. So we've talked about Marco Polo and Ibn Battuta and Fernando Cortez and Christopher Columbus, Lewis and Clark, Ferdinand Magellan, all sorts of different people. He's always so interested in what we're learning in here. So this one has been really fun. But again, this was something that it was obvious that he was interested in, especially when we were doing the atlas, and I saw how excited that he was about travel and things like that. And it just seemed perfect to go ahead and include a book about adventurers and explorers. And so that's what I really mean. You know your child better than anyone else. You can see what interests them, what kind of makes them light up. And so you can always incorporate those things into their homeschooling, even at a super young age. So I really just wanted to use this video to encourage you and to say that there doesn't have to be some set specific plan that you're following. You don't have to run out and buy the most expensive curriculum. You are absolutely able to just go ahead and have like a framework of, you know, they need to learn how to count and know about these numbers and do some basic addition and whatever else. And then to be able to supply those certain needs with whatever resources you see fit. Now, for some parents, it is absolutely easier and they would rather just go out and purchase a curriculum, and that's totally fine. I'm not shaming that either. I want you to do whatever's best for your family, but I know that there can be a lot of pressure out there to kind of find the perfect curriculum. And to me, especially at this young age, that's when it's easiest to kind of just go with your gut, to enjoy time with your child, and to let the learning kind of happen naturally. All right, guys, but that is all that I have for you today. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. It helps other people to see it. If you like these videos in general and want more like them, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I kind of focus on all things homeschooling. I appreciate you taking the time to watch, and I will catch you guys next time. Bye.